Welcome to our forum. After the past several weeks when we've been talking about prejudices in these discussions, differences that divide, tonight we'd like to talk about some of the similarities between countries. At least that's the way we plan to start out the discussion. Let me first introduce the students to you. First is Yoriko Konishi from Japan. It was Yoriko whom you saw dancing just a moment ago. Although Yoriko isn't in tonight's discussion, we did want you to see her dance because, although very different from Western dances, it may be referred to later in the program because there is, all the same, a bond that it represents. Next, from Egypt, Farouk Mahmoud. Farouk, in his Shakespearean English, told a girl a few minutes ago that he was going to enshrine her friendship in the casket of his heart, and she thought he meant that he was burying it. From Germany, Christoph Bertrand. Christoph has been here 3 months now, like all the others, but Christoph is looking forward to his first blind date. From Israel, Zohar Arshavsky. You know what I'm going to say about you, Zohar? What do you think I should say?
I don't know.
Remember the other day when a lot of the delegates were saying that the first thing they were going to do when they got home was to sleep? Remember what you said you were going to do?
I know what you're going to say.
Go to her scout troop. Romano Kuntz from Switzerland. Romano,
yeah.
Are you as much of a clown at home as you are here?
A clown? I didn't realize that I was a clown here.
Well, you are, Romano.
Thank you. That's a very nice voice.
I was just trying to find out if American informality had changed your personality at all.
I think it did.
How?
To a large extent, I'm afraid.
Well,
Yeah.
we hope not too, in a wrong extent. How about, Karina, I would like to check something I've just heard about you.
Something
Karina Mantila from Finland. I hear that you learn English so well, you've learned it so well, that you're now talking in your sleep, not in English, but
No.
not in Finnish, but in English. Is that true?
Well, I was told so. I don't remember what I told myself.
Now, 5 countries, Egypt, Israel, Germany, Switzerland, Finland. I said we were going to start out by talking about some of the similarities between countries. Can we?
Yeah, we can start here, just here. What has Germany and Switzerland of common?
Well, it's a very good
Besides-
question.
Besides of the language?
Should we show the people? Should we speak German?
Shall we speak German? Shall we start?
There's
No.
one is the language,
No, no.
and then there's a lot of literature floating on.
Well, is it the same?
Besides, well, what do you mean?
I mean,
Is it
Swiss
the same?
German and German.
Well, Swiss German is a little nicer than German.
Well, I must interfere because, you know...
Can you give us an example, Romano?
Well, you see, it's so the German is the common German is very flat, very. It has no feeling. It has no emotional feeling. You cannot express yourself in the common German. Therefore, we use a wonderful dialect, and in this dialect we can really express our feelings. German
For
is too
example.
plain. Well, the German, for instance, when somebody is very a silly guy.
This is not romantic,
You would say,
nor
just a
emotional
minute,
romantic.
crazy, somebody a little crazy. Then the German says, he, for instance, would say, das ist ein Narr.
No, but no.
And just a minute. But we, in Swiss dialect, in our dialect, we say, das ist ein Chumpel. And Chumpel, that expresses much better, you see. She feels in the same way as I do. So you have to be...
We just got one example. There's so many examples. Well,
No,
it's
you
gonna
see,
be hard.
that's the same to explain. In American, for instance, why do you use slang? You can express much better what you have on your heart.
We
when you
got
use
you there,
slang.
Romano. Swiss language is slang. Now, I was the other
Fine.
day when
A
we were
good
in Washington.
slang.
When we were in
A
Washington.
good slang. A good slang.
All right,
Okay.
next point.
When we were in Washington, some fellow of his embassy called, and these people started talking Schweizerdeutsch, which was the most
Swiss German.
barbaric thing
That
I've
was
ever
good.
heard in my life. Even
All right,
worse
you
than
aren't
Dutch.
going to agree on that. Anything else that Germany and Switzerland's got in common?
No, look, man. When you say, for instance, this guy is mad, it's not so good as if you say he's crazy. You feel the difference.
All right,
And
we
this
don't
is-
agree
this is
on this
exactly
matter of
the same
language.
difference as we have. Well, now I think maybe in future we have more of common, because I think the best solution for Germany in future would be if it would become neutral. I think this is the only solution when you want to gather both parts, East Germany and West Germany. I think they are so controversial now today in their ideas, in their way of living, in every respect. And I think neutrality, declaration of neutrality, is the only solution. As
Well, it
Austria,
seems to
for
me
instance.
that you forgot one thing there. You can't declare neutrality as often as you want. If there are 2 parts of Germany, you cannot declare neutrality in two parts will be
Well,
neutral.
but I hope.
I mean,
that-
I wish that there would be neutrality in the future.
But I
But
hope.
I just don't see the way to it. And,
Yeah, but I think, I hope at least, and you hope also that Germany will once be united.
well, but I don't see. I hope it will be united,
Fine.
but I don't see the way to have a neutral
Oh,
united
I don't.
Germany. Because
So
even
the-
a united Germany
Should
that is
be
neutral, that is neutral,
Yeah.
would be some sort of cat-mouse neutrality towards the bloc of Russia. You Swiss have many good ideas, and you think
Well,
everything that you have in this little tiny piece of land up there in the Alps,
Yeah.
you can transfer to any part in the world. Be
I
it
don't say
in the
that.
South Sea, be it in America, or be it in Germany. But sometimes you can't.
Yeah, I see this.
I mean,
but,
you're-
well, give me a reason why you couldn't be neutral in Germany.
Why
I
don't you
think-
first tell us what you mean by neutrality, really?
Well, by neutrality, I mean that you do not participate too much in the world affairs, and that you leave to your neighbors up much more what they have among themselves to discuss.
But why
that
don't you
you do
take
not
part in the
interfere too
UN,
much.
for example?
We cannot take part in the UN on account of the neutral principle in Switzerland. And we belong to 10 organizations of the UN, and to 10 active organizations, and to the best one of the UN, in my opinion, to the UNESCO. And we cannot join, for instance, the NATO, because this would be against the neutral principle of Switzerland.
And that is
Besides, you
immutable.
Americans have been neutral for a long time. We shouldn't be so skeptical against neutrality as I see that you are.
No, just
Besides that, we Swiss are quite confident that being neutral, we help much more in this earth, to have a good situation between the nations. Switzerland, if it would join the NATO, it could not contribute too much. It's just a population of 4.5 million. But being neutral, we can favor much more the ideals of democracy and of human rights, because there is always a spot in this earth where people can come together and discuss when all over the world there is.
Excuse me, Ronald, did you say that you have democracy in your country? Sort of democracy, really.
Very
What
democracy.
yes, what
more
about the women?
More democratic than Switzerland is impossible, in my
What
opinion.
about the women, please? I heard the women can't vote in your country.
Well, this is something else.
Yes, please tell me why.
Well, fine. I must say, well, they attack me on both sides. That's unfair. Fine. It might sound like a paradox when I say that Switzerland has no woman suffrage because the structure of the community, of the state, and of the federation is far more democratic than any other nation.
So you want to say if there's something...
Just a minute, boy. Let me finish. Indeed, being the most democratic nation, we have also the biggest difficulties with the problems that democracy brings.
For instance,
For instance, nowhere else has the will of the people so big influence on its governing body as in Switzerland. This has advantages and
What
disadvantages.
has the women?
Just a minute. Let me finish.
come on.
In other nations, as for instance in France and in England, the democracy is indirect. And the voters, man or woman, have the right to elect its government or be elected to it. With that, their political powers are exhausted. But now, in these cases, woman suffrage has been introduced by a parliament that had been granted provisional powers after a revolution. And therefore, this parliament was in the mood to be generous with reformation.
Can we do with the
And
Swiss
therefore they
parliament
put-
to make it
It's
generous?
so
To put it
complicated
in the
for me to
mood?
understand
Yeah,
what
yeah.
Even if you would make the Swiss parliament so generous, it's no use because the parliament
What do you
has
mean by
not
generous?
got
What do you mean by generous?
the power to introduce woman suffrage. The
Generous
whole
means,
population.
Omar,
must
Generous
have-
means if there's a nice parliament. The parliament's in the mood, and then there are poor little women standing before the government.
Well, doesn't he really
But
mean
it's
that
right.
only the
That's
men
the
have got the
right.
vote? Since only the men have got the
Yes,
vote,
and
naturally the
women-
men aren't going to vote to give it to women. Isn't that what you mean? By
No, you
generosity?
see, because we are, you see, in Switzerland, and because we are so democratic, only the people has the right to give
What
the
they
woman
call
to vote.
people men, and the women are the first
What they call
people.
people men.
Well, part of it, yes.
Well,
half of it, half of it.
But what is the other part?
The other part are the woman that agrees with the
Well.
man.
I see. And when they don't get to agree with the man, so what happens?
Well, not
Dictatorship
too
of the
much.
man.
As far as now, they agreed. You see, this is
Did
this
they
is the
have
very
any
situation
opportunity
we have
to show that
today.
they don't agree?
Just a minute. This is the situation we have today. We have no pressure from the side of the woman. The
But
woman
can you
the women do not try to get into the
Why don't
parliament.
they want
No,
to?
may,
They have no
may I
pressure.
Please, may I please ask something?
Yeah.
Is there any pressure in Russia, for instance, to create another party? No, there isn't.
No.
Will you say that everybody in Russia agrees to what the government says? You wouldn't say
Oh,
that.
oh gosh.
Well, of course you wouldn't say.
Oh gosh, what
Teacher.
kind of example do you bring here?
Say
Come on,
anything.
answer.
Will you please answer it?
I understood something else because I thought if there would be a Russian pressure in Switzerland. I don't know, I have not been in Russia, I cannot tell you anything about that.
But you see, you have given a very beautiful story, but you haven't given any one good reason why women should not vote.
What's your
Well,
personal
look, I will tell you
If,
this.
may I please say something? If they agree with the men, so let's say you don't fear them, why don't they let them vote? If you say that you have a country where there's only one party, and everybody agrees with it, so there's only one party.
Yeah. Now,
There's
let
no
me-
need of another. Would you call it democracy? I
She
remember
always
a very...
speaks, she asked me, but she does not like to answer. Gosh.
You
Go
did it all the
ahead.
time
Why
before.
we have no woman suffrage? That's the reason. They
But
just
you were
think
doing
they
it
never
all the time
listen.
before.
But don't you think that you must give women back in Switzerland the right to vote, whether sooner or later?
Yeah.
We even in the Middle East
it will make
nowadays,
it come.
what a moment. We even nowadays in the Middle East and Egypt, after the new constitution, women back there have the right to vote.
Yeah.
Why
You
don't
see,
you
from
give them
the
the
point
right?
of view of human rights
Yes.
and of real democracy, I cannot justify why we have no human rights, and I don't want to
Oh,
try
interesting.
to say why we have no human rights.
It's
No,
one
no,
of
Women's
that's-
suffrage.
women suffrage.
So just-
Gosh, human rights, something
So
else.
you state something...
Yeah, now just a minute. The question is where the limits between theory and practice have to be drawn. There are limits. And we Swiss simply do not see why we should change our constitution why we should change our constitution since as far as now it has proved to be good. And this feeling is
Who
not
says
only
it's good? The men. The women.
and this feeling is not only from the man but also from the woman.
How do you know?
How do you know? I meet
Every
women in
husband
Switzerland.
asks his
do they
wife,
like
yes,
it?
and then
Maybe.
they say it into parliament. Oh, how practical.
Well, listen, if the woman would try to come in, they would organize something. They would
How
would
do you
try
know?
to
Have you
come in.
tried? Have you tried?
What?
To
Try.
let them
I am
to
not a
put-
woman.
Have the men in Switzerland tried to give the women any opportunity to show what they want?
No, the woman must first know what they want.
Must
First-
what?
That's the initiative.
How do you know
did
that-
they in America? How did they in France? How did they in
Well, they were
England? How
tolerant
did they in
men. They were
Germany?
tolerant men, it
Oh,
seems
I
to
don't
me.
think so. I don't think so. In America, it was a great battle.
Well, at
until they
least we've got
in.
him to, sorry, Zohar, we've at least got him to admit
Yeah.
that theoretically he hasn't any leg to stand on. You did admit that, didn't you? Let's go on to another.
On theory, yes.
Yeah, on
I
theory,
know,
all right,
I know.
we've already had
On
that.
theory, it's I can justify it, but in practice, it's better if you have no woman in parliament. You agree with me?
No, no, we don't.
That's good. You already agreed.
No,
you are
you
not
agreed.
allowed to back out.
You
allowed
agree
to
that
back out.
practically it's also possible, but because the Swiss parliament was run for such a long time in a certain way, you don't want to change it. And that's the only reason that you gave.
Fine. Let's see what we have of common.
When
You are a heterogeneous nation.
Excuse me?
More
have-
peaceful, I guess.
You are a heterogeneous
what does it
nation.
exactly mean?
Well, what does it exactly mean? Gosh, a nation that consists of Negroes, of Americans, of English, of Swiss, of
Well.
Germans, and of different countries. That's
Well,
heterogeneous.
they're not exactly all these nations, but they came
You
from
see,
these
Switzerland
countries.
is heterogeneous. We speak 4 languages.
Well, how much? You know, we speak 60.
Well, that's a little more.
I think it's a little
How
more.
well do you go with it?
How what?
How well?
We improve very much. I mean, every time we make the numbers smaller. We try to make everybody speak only one language, that's Hebrew. What you say is a
But
language.
we don't make that in Switzerland. We don't
Anything
make
else
that.
in common between
Yeah,
Israel
I
and
think.
Switzerland?
Listen, why are you not neutral? Why don't you think that it would clear up the situation in the Middle East if Israel would be neutral.
Oh, well, I wish we were neutral. If it could only be, then if I could only make it, I'd be the greatest man, woman of my country.
Who prevents you from being neutral?
Oh, no, I don't. Oh, she's accusing me. There's something important which I want to say, that nowadays, back in Egypt, we don't want to start any conflict or any war in Palestine. You must know this, that in our policy, which we have just established after the revolution, wars have no place in this policy, that which was just established to improve the lot of the people. Wars will do nothing for us. We are going to lose much than to gain much of to see from the achievement we want to have in the future. Now we have a revolution back in Egypt, and we don't want any war that is going to direct our attention towards the battle of field. We have a revolution that's trying to rebuild the country. We are trying to industrialize the country so that we may rise into power and progress. So we don't want any war that's going to bring us ruin, misery, and destruction. That I want to make clear. Also, I heard a lot of talks about communist infiltration in the various Arab and African nationalist movements. And I think, and I'm sure that's going to be unwise for the United States if the United States is going to take this view of nationalist action, because this is just led by sincere patriots whose sincere desire, or whose only desire, is to release their countries or to free their countries from foreign domination. So the thing that I want to make clear is that no communist infiltration is going to take place in the Middle East, just if the United States is going to develop a courageous policy, and a morally correct one is to help or support those people who are anxious to get rid of foreign domination or foreign influence. Because real independence is the only or the greatest defense against communist or any other type of this infiltration. Because real free men are the only defenders of their country and liberty.
I think it's astonishing how this climax of nationalism all over this area finally bursts out, and the only natural thing for people to do to want freedom is reaction all over this place. And I
But
think
it's an interesting thing, too, that Israel and Egypt have so much in common in terms of this nationalism that's trying to express itself. What else do your countries have in common?
You see, we have the problem of these refugees, for instance, and I think there are maybe, you know, this may be sometimes, but we have, I can say that we have a lot of troubles in common.
What else have you got in common, do you think, with the Arabs?
Well, besides the refugees,
You mean you have had
we have
the knowledge of what it's
our
like?
refugees. We have the same experience at the same time. We have in common, we have a country which we must build. And it's very, very hard because we don't have tradition of building a country. And I saw the program of Edward Morrow about Egypt and Israel, and I was surprised how much you could take pictures of Egypt into Israel and it would fit perfectly the way you build your country. And then we both need very badly water. Very, very badly we need water. And then you made a revolution very, very short time ago. We are only 7 years a state. We both have to study from our experience how to make it the best democracy and the best, as you said, independent country. And it's very much in common because we make mistakes and we study from it.
Yeah. They say that experience is a very unusual teacher. It first examines you and then gives you the lesson. You know, must put this before our eyes.
Well, I think there is quite a lot anti-Semitism in Germany. Is there also kind of anti-Germanism in Israel?
In a way there is, because the wounds which we received in the last World War are still fresh, and quite a big percent of the population members of family who were lost. And it would be unnatural to ask them to forget it.
Are German Jews disadvantaged in Israel?
No, they're not at all.
I was astonished being over here in a Jewish family, coming from Germany, how friendly and how welcoming they were. And I was even more astonished when I was in the school, which was in a large majority Jewish, was in Brooklyn. And all of them, or most of them, seemed to have forgotten what Germany, or German leaders, or Germany had done to them in the last years of the war. And I didn't know whether I should be happy about it, because doesn't it mean if you forget your resentments, if you forget your pride in being of a special race, that you, at the same time, forget your tradition. But it seemed to me that this was one of the ways to get over it. You spoke about the anti-Semitism in Germany, and I must say that it exists still. I don't like to say it, but if I wouldn't say it, if I told you it didn't exist, it would be a lie.
How can you explain that? I don't know. What have the Germans special against the Jews?
Well, it's a long story, and I could start a long time ago. I even could start off in saying that there are so many Jewish people that felt German and contributed to German culture, to German progress so very much, that it would be just narrow-minded to be an anti-Semite in Germany. But you see, after the war, after all these crimes had been done to Jewish people were reinstated in their positions by the victors of the war, by the Allied governments. And people that had committed crimes against the Jewish people were punished by Allied courts.
That's all right.
And the victor only could do it because he, or in the eyes of the people, only could do it because he was the victor and he had the power to force a punishment. And that many people draw a line between Allied victory, Allied punishment, Jewish influence on the war. And many people, comes up with some, I met somebody who told me it was the Jewish people who caused the Second World War. I hope that it'll cease, and I think it will cease, but it takes a long time.
Well, I can understand this last point. I cannot understand why it began, but I think if we had in our own country, if we will be defeated, and the allies or the victory allies will put on top of us somebody, some foreigner, and we dislike him too. But please don't take it as if I understand why there was anti-Semitism from the beginning.
Well,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
anti-Semitism from the beginning, when you study history, you see that a certain anti-Semitism was all over the world there,
Yes.
above all coming out of the Middle Age. And there are small reasons sometimes, but they cause big troubles.
Does it make any sense to ask you this? Since most of you are agreed that you aren't born with prejudices, does that mean that you learn them? And if it means you learn them, does that mean that you could also be taught not to have prejudices? What could change in your school systems or the way you're brought up today that would illustrate that? Anything?
You could all send me to America and look from America to our countries and see them over there.
Yeah.
And we could meet so many people. We could discuss with them and see how long our prejudices will stand. I think all of us have kind of changed our minds and changed our opinions during this time.
But if the prejudices come from the older people, and it's still the older people that train the younger people, is there any hope at all?
Oh yes, of
Oh yeah,
course there
you
is.
see, certain prejudices come and certain prejudices go. It's,
Excuse me. You know, you are taught prejudice from your very cradle. You have been born and you have been taught these prejudices, and you know you have inherited these, and it's quite hard to give up these prejudices.
I think the trouble
But-
is,
Yeah, the trouble. Yes, done.
You see, if there was only one prejudice in the whole world, it wouldn't pass out. But there are some prejudices about the same point. And when people meet and they come into contact and they're civilized enough
Yes.
to see the other point of view, then they begin to examine their own prejudice. And that's why we are much, much improved. If you look back at the Middle Ages and look now, you see that somehow prejudices are getting less and less.
I agree
You
with
agree
you,
with
somewhat
that?
constant.
I think, well, at least I have learned one thing here, and I'm very glad of that. Before I came here, I wasn't very conscious of other people. I didn't think of them too much. But now I am so forced to think of them when I see them, and I never realized before how little I know about them. Well, when I saw Yoriko's dance, I at the same time thought to say something else. I thought that I saw the rising sun in Japan and the people sitting and singing or dancing there. And their song was so sad because the moment of the sunrise passes so quickly that they can never completely understand the wonder of it. And I think those people, they want to understand how different it was from a Finnish folk dance. Ours is so full of speed and gay, and it's so gay and it's full of laughing. But though they were so different, they both were searches for beauty, and that's common to all the nations. I think we all search for beauty, and that better than anything else can unite the world. And well, there was only one thing I was afraid before I left, and there was that I would let my life go without doing anything for other people, quite purposeless. But now when I have come here, at least I know the goal. I know that I want to learn. I really want to learn. And when I think of that, I realize how much I would miss if I wouldn't learn more. I want to learn to understand people. I never realized that there were individuals in the other countries, in the faraway countries. I thought they were just masses of people. But now when there's Yoriko in Japan, maybe in Ethiopia, I see that, oh, they are my friends and they are real and they are concrete. Well, I really feel like standing at the huge gate, and all the world is behind the gate. And if I only can find the key to get in.
Thank you, Karina, Romano, Christoph, Sohar, and Faruk. Next week is the final program in the series, and we'll have all 33 delegates here. Anything you've disagreed with that they've said in the last 3 months, send it in, and we'll try to get an answer. Until next week, then, goodbye.